We are on air. Oh, there we are. Your timing is exquisite. So welcome to the Mashpee Board of Sewer Commissioners on Thursday, July 14th at 2 p.m. Everybody is here, I believe. Ray Jack is here, Chad Smith, Phil Sprout, Joe Lyons, Marietta, I'm sorry. I got my neighbor's name in my head.
Call me Linda.
Oh, Meredith.
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 I got the M right.
It's quite all right. We know who.
So, I'd like to call it to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to have a moment of silence for those poor people in Texas and Illinois who are suffering with children. Someone signed up for public participation. You want to identify yourself and take a seat?
I wonder if everyone wouldn't mind talking into their microphones? I think it's hard, it's very hard to hear unless you're talking into the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
No, that's
out of
okay.
position.
That's fine.
Yep.
My name is Marcia McInnes. I live on Dixon Drive.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your
Oh.
name.
Marcia McInnes on Dixon Drive. And I want to thank the chair for your meticulous following of state and town law on open meeting. I think the way that you handled the nomination meeting was excellent. I wish everyone followed your good example. I want to tell you that I'm sorry that the Board of Selectmen didn't respect all of your recommendations. I think that that was disrespectful on their part. But it looks like you have a fine candidate that you're interviewing today. Professor Castaneda looks formidable. I think she'd be a wonderful addition. I do hope that Tom Fadala will be welcome to participate in these meetings. However, it would be possible for him to do so that his remarks are on the record, because his knowledge, as we all know, and experience and dedication to the town is incomparable. So I would thank you for considering that suggestion, and I'm very happy to see the new members here. Best of luck to you all. You have a tough assignment, but I think you're going to do just fine. Thank you.
All right. Do each of the members have a copy of the June 23 minutes? How about you, Al? Do you have a copy?
Yes, I do.
Does anybody want to address the approval of those minutes?
I move that we accept the meeting minutes of July 23rd. I mean, June 23rd.
A second?
I'll second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion?
I don't believe Phyllis or I can vote, as we were not members at that time.
Those in favor? Aye. Okay, we're all set. Unanimous. I'd like to start with the new business first today and address Catherine Castaneda. You are on board because it is the policy and also the prerogative of the Board of Selectmen to nominate people to the committee, even though in most cases they are recommended by the Sewer Commission. So if you want to introduce yourself or say hello to the commission, you can take the mic.
Hello, commission members.
And are you known as Kat or Catherine?
Catherine. My name's Catherine Castaneda. Castaneda is my married name. but last name was Hoover, maiden name. Spent all my summers on the Cape in the 1960s. Fell in love with the coastal landscapes and fascinated by the ecology, but of course I went to the Pacific Northwest to get a degree in marine biology. Crazy, right? And studied the Gulf Coast and went to Central America and acquired a ton of experience doing research and teaching, and came back to the United States in 1998 and began a consulting career with the company that changed names a couple of times, but I'm still with them. Occasionally I do minor work. But it's been fascinating working on so many varied types of environmental projects. I've gone from remediation of mine waste to water pollution controls to doing tons of research on military facilities, much like goes on here at Joint Base Cape Cod. I've done audits of recycling companies, you name it. A lot of companies in Mexico, retail facilities. I've done environmental hazardous waste training for shipping companies, for big box stores. My clients have often been lawyers on behalf of their clients. Anyways, just to name a few, but I'd say since about 2005, increasingly involved in disaster recovery work, working with HUD, and HUD primarily, but also FEMA and local governments in towns, but also large cities. And it's through the large cities that I was exposed to infrastructure recovery work, and piqued my interest, especially in New York City. And now here, I know that it's a big challenge across the Cape. Mashpee is my home now. I want it to be successful in cleaning up its water resources, and decided I have the time to contribute my experience. I have a lot to learn from those of you who have been here, and people like Tom Fadala, who I know. But maybe I can build on my experience and help the town move forward with phase 1 of the wastewater treatment project. I'm very interested in stormwater management controls. I think that's a challenging problem all over the world, but I want to tackle it in my own backyard if I can. So I'm interested in stormwater management controls and the contribution to contamination as well.
We should make sure that you and Ashley get together, because that's Ashley's bailiwick. What's Ashley's last name? Fisher.
Yeah, and
She's planning that in these areas which will be shortly soon sewered.
Yeah, so I'm very concerned about stormwater management, but it rises from my exposure to contractors who don't follow the rules and don't follow the guidance very well, and they need to be carefully overseen in order to not disturb private property or public property and make matters worse with stormwater management and pollution controls. So that's kind of my interest. I am a geographer. I take that seriously. I'm a map maker. I love maps. I don't like bad maps. So maps that are useful for information is critical to conveying messages and education, and sometimes maps are misleading. So I'm interested in that too as a public outreach and education tool, especially for a project like what we're handling here. So Really, I would just mention that I've been working within the Katuitt Bay community to try and stem an erosion issue that to some doesn't seem big, but it is significant to several residents, and including me. So I am contributing to that, working with Talbot Ecological Land Care and Drew McManus as well, where possible. So I am involved in that, but I just thought you should know. And that's about it. Do you have any questions?
Just welcome. I look forward to working with you.
Yes, I want to say thank you for coming, and we do welcome your expertise. The question I have is, with all of your experience and with all of the things you're interested in, what would be the main thing you would like to focus on first?
I'm interested in stormwater, but
Okay.
I am committed to making the wastewater treatment program successful in every way I can. Community outreach, whatever's needed, so wherever I can be of use.
What do you think maybe, again, building on your experience, what do you think may be some of the biggest issues in trying to convince our residents, our populations of Mashpee in accepting changes?
I think everybody has to understand that we are in this together. We're investing in it. Water quality is a basic, essential need for everybody, and for our other resources like fisheries, and for the functioning of the community, and for it to grow and develop, if it wants to grow and develop. So, and also, well, for every element of the environment here, but particularly human health. And people, I believe that's an easy thing for people to understand, that they're invested in it. They want the community to be successful, to be sustainable, even if there's growth, and growth in population and growth in industrial and commercial development. I think balances can be achieved, but balance is often pie in the sky kind of thing. It's hard to understand everybody's different view of balance. But when you come right down to it, you have to think about the best available data that we have, the best available information that we have on all the resources and our people, and make the best decisions taking in consideration everybody's point of view. I think everybody's point of view is important, and we have to take that into account, especially, if they have valid arguments. So I think that helping people understand those basics is essential, and once you have that, you can build on that, and you can talk about the value of their property, and help them understand how they can contribute without too much pain, and how they will benefit short-term, medium-term, long-term. Getting people on board is a challenge, but it can happen, and I have seen it work. It just takes understanding. You need to comprehend where they're coming from, and then reach out to their concerns as best as you can. That's my purpose.
Thank you.
There's major movements afoot for the planning in this community, and Ashley's already deeply into stormwater management in some particular areas, like Santuit Pond, for example.
And I live on Santuit River, so I see the results out of my living room window. So
Let me give you some information that will reinforce your commitment in that area.
definitely.
Some 45% of the pollution of nitrogen that gets all the way down to Pompanesett comes down your river.
I know, I see
All
it.
right, so it starts up at Santuit, north of there, and comes all the way down, and then through Shoestring Day.
True.
And then pollutes
Yeah,
Pompanesett.
I've only-
Now, the rest is in the river, that is directly deposited
In the muck.
Mashpee
Yeah,
River. That also comes down, touches on Shoestring Bay, and then goes into Pompanesett.
Right.
And then every 6 hours, when the tide goes the other way, all that
Flushes.
pollution is washed back upriver, which pollutes all of the marsh.
Correct.
All the way up to Route 28.
Correct.
The tide actually goes that high. I've been there many a day, sometimes in kayaks, the other times walking a dog, and watched the sludge flow uphill, all the way up to Route 28. So that's what we're addressing with all of Phase 1, everybody on that side that contributes nitrogen. Now, Ashley's attacking it on the stormwater side. But any planning and permitting for building and housing and all of that, there has to be a consciousness on
Right.
what happens to stormwater. And I think that we'll get there. And hopefully you'll have a part in
Oh, I can help with that. A lot of,
illuminating the
a lot-
need for it.
a lot of my neighbors who have lived there a lot longer at Katuitt Bay on the riverbank, Santuit River, much longer than I had, decades longer, they tell me that the changes just in the last few years are so,
I'm on the other side on
Yeah.
Little River, and I can testify to the
It's-
last 20
yeah.
years how it's changed as well.
it's really interesting. Yeah, and of course, I've seen eutrophication before in lots of places, and I know how miserable it can be, so we want to treat that as soon as possible.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Okay.
Welcome again.
Okay.
We'll be scheduling meetings. I'm not sure how frequently they should be. They were originally set up as every other week. We can discuss that later, because I want to discuss something else too. Appreciate you coming today.
Thank you.
How about a sewer construction team update? With Ray Jack, who is the, let's call him the Mashpee Town Manager for the construction project. He's coordinating 3 engineering firms, state applications, paperwork galore. So tell us what's happened in the last week or so. Keep us up to date, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me? Yep. So briefly, first, I'd like to welcome the newest members, okay? I'm looking forward to working with everyone, and I'm available if you wanted to meet and, give me any information or provide information to you that may be beneficial any day other than this afternoon. I have a commitment immediately after this, okay? But at any time, please, my office is right across the hall here, all right? I already have your emails, so if you'd like, I can, send something out, all right?
Should we perhaps coordinate so you don't have to do it 3 times?
That's fine, too.
I would like that.
That would be fine, too. As a matter of fact, there may be a substantial benefit to that, because a lot of times, and I deal with this at the state level all the time, everybody's in their own little corner on an issue. Never the two shall meet. And I've never understood that from a regulatory perspective. It's important to hear what the left hand is saying, and this way there would be that opportunity, so yes. Okay, we have Phase 1, consists of 3 contracts. Contract 1 is the Water Resource Recovery Facility, which is the actual wastewater plant that's going to be constructed up adjacent to the landfill/transfer station in the wooded area off Ashers. Then we have the sewer service area north of 28, which is Contract 2. The primary difference between 2 and 3, Contract 2 and 3, is that Contract 2 doesn't involve a lift station. There are 3 lift stations proposed for Contract 3. A lift station is a wastewater means of lifting wastewater up from a low point and then advancing it under pressure through a pressure main to be able to get it to the plant or to a larger collection main. So by law, Contract 1 has 2 separate processes. You have a GC process and a sub-bid process. Sub-bid process has to go first. So on the scheme of things with the bidding dates, Sub-bids are received by the town first. That will be coming up shortly. The entire bidding process for all 3 projects will be completed by August 11th. But then probably 10 days after the sub-bids are received, the town will review them through its engineering firms and then provide the results of that bid process to the general contractors who are intending to bid. And they have the opportunity to select the sub-bidders on that project. It's a little bit different than the collection system contracts because under Mass General Law 149, it involves vertical construction. It involves a building that's over $10 million. And when that happens, you have various sub-trades, electrical, masonry, plumbing, things of that nature that are going to play a key role or a major component of the contract. So that's why they have to offer the opportunity to have filed sub-bidders first. So it's scheduled to be completed, the whole process scheduled to be completed by August 11th. If the bids are considered viable by the town, then we're expecting to be able to finalize everything and execute contracts no later than September 30th. Yes.
Who will decide if they're viable? What is the approval process created by the town?
Well, once all the contracts are in, as far as the bids, we already have the estimated values for each of the respective contracts and sub-areas of those contracts. So we'll do an analysis and comparison. The engineers will provide that information to me and then take a look at it to see that it's going to
Was that a
fit.
statement that GHD would evaluate the financial value of the bids?
Yes.
Thank you.
GHD is handling the bid process specifically. So they will provide that analysis for all 3 contracts.
Yeah.
And then it would come to me. I'll be presenting it to the board. And then ultimately it would go to town manager / selectman for review. But it comes to you first in that regard. So if I determine based on the information that the town would be able to proceed financially with the contracts, I'll be recommending to you to approve the contracts. The actual signatory on the contracts is the executive officer of the town, which is town manager. All right? But I do want to caution everyone here, we're on a very, very tight time constraint. September 30th is a deadline by the state for an fully executed contract. So when these come in, it's mid-August when the bids are finalized. It'll take another month for that process to occur, which puts us in mid-September. I'm hoping around 2nd or 3rd week in September, we're prepared to go through this. But it does mean you would have to meet in order to approve or not the contracts. Okay, so I'm just kind of giving you a heads up in advance.
All right, just for a moment on that. Our opinion is solicited. We are not signing the contract or not. We may sign the acknowledgement to say we approve, but it is not our authority. The town itself, the the town manager is the decision point. So this is still us operating as a staff organization with an opinion on the acceptance of the contracts, and that can be based on both Ray's opinion, our own personal opinions, other information that may come to us, or we can ask for additional information. But then it's our job to support the town with a recommendation.
Exactly, and thank you for the clarification. I will do my best to walk the commission through it, all right? Sometimes these can be extensive and difficult, all right? But I'll try to make it as easy as possible. So as part of the sewer collection system construction, because there's going to be 2 contracts out there, north and south of 28, both are really doing the same thing with the exception of the lift stations. But nonetheless, as part of that, the contractor or contractors, it could be 1 and/or 2 contracts because they're contractors because they are separate contracts. So maybe one will get both, maybe separate contractors will get each. But either way, a backhoe is going to start digging and a hole's going to go in the ground. They're going to come up to the first house, and at that point, it's decision time on behalf of the contractors and the town. All properties within the sewer service area have been identified, and a service lateral for each one of those properties has been identified. That is a best estimate of where it should go based on all available information, but in the end, it requires an affirmation by the homeowner. So where we would be with that, and one of the items that you have on your agenda today, is a review of the sewer rules and regulations. Literally, they will be the Bible for the commission once they're adopted. I have made a comment about them before at a prior meeting when I reviewed them and read them and said that, in my opinion, they were well written. And since then, I've learned why, in that they were based on federal standards, all right, something called the 10 states standards. After 1940s, after World War II, there's literally was a building boom, if you will. And 10 states out in the Midwest wanted to be able to figure out how they were going to accommodate that. They got together, established what's known as the 10 state standards, and that still stands today as the national recognition of water and wastewater systems for construction purposes. So they really are well done. I've done some minor revisions on a document, and I can email them out to the board members for review. I couldn't do it prior to this meeting because I didn't have everybody's email at that time. But I'd be happy to do that, and I think that they're going to be important for the commission as well as the homeowners and the contractors, for that matter. So I'll be sending out a letter to all the homeowners in the sewer service area if the town moves forward with the project and determines that it's viable, announcing the project's start and giving them information on what that means for them, how that project's going to impact them. Many people have not been through a major construction project that's going to be in front of their house, all right? At the same time, I may like to have a meeting with the homeowners to make sure that any and all questions that they may have over the project are going to be able to be answered. So I've already reviewed the Phase 2 sewer service areas, as well as all of the other phases. I reviewed the MEPA document and the Secretary's certificate from Environmental Affairs on the town's current plan, which was adopted in 2015. This is now 2022. So it's 7 years past its inception. We are just now starting in Phase 1. One of the requirements of that document under the MEPA certificate was that following each phase, the town has to reevaluate its plan for all subsequent phases. That is a lengthy process, meaning a year and a half, sometimes even 2 years. So now would be the time to start that. I know the commission had made suggestions on moving forward on that plan. I've already reviewed all of that, and I personally concur with those suggestions, all right? So at this point, I am looking to find out what the actual scope and cost of performing that analysis would be. For everyone's benefit here, there's a couple different ways to do that. One of them gets into a design concept, a lower level of design. They usually call it a 25% design. I don't see us moving in that direction at this time for an analysis. So we're going to be looking at these service areas with the idea of evaluating where the town is, meaning it built Phase 1, it was building Phase 1. It has shellfish regulations and processes that they're currently doing, future sewering that may or may not happen, existing wastewater treatment plants at other areas like Mashpee Commons. So all of that is going to factor into that analysis. But I don't get into design, because why would you design something if you're not sure if that's what you want to do? So this analysis is intended to take the board and the town to that point where you say, okay, this is where we want to be. That, to me, is when you want to consider design, all right? Hopefully, the commission will agree with that, and I'll be meeting with you again to be able to give you the details on all of this, with the concept that possibly that would go for this fall town meeting to fund that effort. And as I said, it usually takes a year and a half, 2 years, just to complete that effort, and that puts us right on the end of this construction effort, which is better than 2 years, all right? Lastly, at last Monday night's Selectmen's meeting, Department of Environmental Protection was here, the commissioner, as well as several other representatives. They gave a presentation to the Board of Selectmen on upcoming regulations. It was a little bit different than normal. Normally, they push out the proposed regulations first, but in this case, that proposal will actually come in the fall. And then they're hoping to adopt them after public comment in probably the spring of next year. I mention that here and now because although I was not present at the meeting, I did watch it, and it is going to impact how we move forward. So the bottom line to that, they had two key terms that they use at DEP, NSA, and then they also had the nutrient areas. All right, so nutrient areas, specifically nitrogen, has been dedicated for many years with respect to zone ones of a public drinking water supply, because they've always been sensitive to having development occur in that zone one, which is a 400-foot radius around a public well, all right, because of the potential impact of a septic system. Now they're kind of expanding that out, okay? So we have the NSAs, are nitrogen sensitive areas. They're going to be a new designation that'll be attached to the NRAs, all right, or natural resource areas. So what they came out with Monday night was an option for the town, and this is going to apply to all Cape towns once these rules are promulgated. Town's going to have a decision point. Either they're going to go with a watershed permit concept, or if they don't, then within a 5-year period, in theory, every individual septic system in town would have to be upgraded within that 5-year period. I don't envision that that is the direction that the town would or should go, but that is just my opinion. I do believe that the best approach would be the watershed approach. It is part and parcel of the planning that the town's already undertaken in the past and will be doing in the next phase. I think it's very logical and very responsible, and probably the most cost-effective way for the town to move forward, as well as the residents. I'll be able to bring back more information for you on that as we start moving forward, all right? But it is an important consideration that the town does have to think about. And that's about where we are. Yes?
Just one point to confirm, but maybe even simplify what you just said. What the state is doing is getting into a rather complex, long-winded, multi-phase definition of what we already know, but putting it in new language, spreading it out, and trying to find ways to help communities fund the solutions that they need to fund. We are or have gone down, and you correct me, please, if you think I'm misstating something, the path that we are in a watershed.
Yes.
In fact, we're in two watersheds.
Yes.
The east side and the west side of, what is the main street that cuts us in half? Everybody should know it.
Great Neck Road.
Great Neck. Okay, north and south. If you're on the west side of it, you're in one watershed. If you're on the east side of it, you're in another watershed. Unfortunately, Sandwich, Barnstable, and Falmouth also contribute sections into these two watersheds. That complicates the issue. But the issue hasn't changed, and thanks to Tom Fadala, we had studies done many years ago, which are now the basis of all the state program information. The Southern Mass, Brian Howes worked and established the TMDLs for the watershed, and the flow patterns of all of the, what do we call them, the sub-watersheds? or
Yes.
Plumes, whatever.
Right.
So this is all pretty well defined, and it's in our five-part plan that was approved in 2015. If you have any questions about what we're doing and what Ray has just said, get into that big contract. It's 300 pages, I know, but you can just blow through the pictures and you'll get the picture, okay? You'll understand that what they did was very carefully divide every street in town, every pond in town, every minor watershed, major watershed, and what their contributions were to either the east or the west side, and what we would have to do on either side to reduce the TMDLs. Now the state's going to get you to put it in writing that you'll fix it. We've already done that with an approved plan. This doesn't mean a big change to us. It's in fact an endorsement of the plan that was created by Tom and others. So don't get nervous about the state coming in with all this new information. We'll have to dance, the music will change just a little bit, but the dance will be the same.
Right, and that's a very good characterization. They're going to, this new watershed plan concept, permit concept, just means a town within 20 years, they're going to make it firm, all right? Town's plan is like 25 years, okay? So they're going to firm it up at 20, and you have to meet 75% of that TMDL number, TMDL value, okay? So it's setting the standard as well as a time frame is really what it boils down to. Their hope is going to be similar to a Pleasant Bay situation, whereby you do have Sandwich, Mashpee, Falmouth, Barnstable, working collectively with IMAs or intermunicipal agreements, all right? Because even here, when you look at Wakeby Pond, all right, the major contributor there isn't in physically Mashpee as much as it is Sandwich, all right? So no solution would occur without that. And there are other instances like that involving Barnstable, and when it comes to Wacoit Bay, involving Falmouth. So that is the hope, that Mashpee gets to a point where they can enter into intermunicipal agreements with adjacent communities for a share. Each one would have a representative share of what the load is that they would try to take out of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. At the moment, we're not there, but I presume that in the foreseeable future that we will be. Okay?
Meredith, you must have questions.
Of course I have questions.
All right, girl.
The first one has to do with what you were just talking about, and with the watershed agreement, or with the watershed plan. There is a 20-year proposal, and I think that that's the thing that has people a little bit scared in saying, oh, why are we going to wait 20 years? Isn't it feasible, though, that this plan will not take 20 years, but instead, by the periodic reporting as the process takes place, that it can possibly be making a huge difference on our environment before the 20 years are up? So I'm asking for your opinion on that.
Well, their new regulatory process has built-in 5-year increments of review, all right, to see where a town is. And how fast and how far any given town can go, and especially with respect to Mashpee, does require affordability. That literally there's only so much that any town can absorb financially. The state has loan programs, yes. They may have some form of grant programs, but generally speaking, they're usually going to be in the zero interest or low interest loan categories. That didn't mean that it was free. That means the town's got to pay that money back, all right? So in trying to move forward with this, one of my primary goals is going to be look at not only the environmental issues and the regulatory requirements that we have to meet, but trying to make sure that going forward, these subsequent phases will be affordable for the town, that you're literally getting the most bang from the buck. And I can tell you now, having looked at the various phases, there are changes that can and should be made to those phases, only to make them a little more logical from a constructability perspective. And I'm going to give you a quick example. we're building a plant, and you're building a collection system adjacent to the plant. It wouldn't be logical to go to the other side of town and start another collection system and try to pipe it to the plant. It's a lot of cost unnecessarily. Logic says you build out from where you're starting so that it can reduce those costs where you have a plant that you can avail yourself of, as opposed to having to build another plant as part of another phase. As well, on the collection system side, you want to design a collection system such that each subsequent area is physically capable of connecting into another area. That's the most affordable way to do it, okay? And I'm going to be looking very, very closely at that as you move forward. Okay?
I have one more question, and it goes back to what you were saying about the analysis, where, for clarification, are you looking at the plan that was propagated back in September 21 that had the 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, Phase 2? So are you saying that you are going to look back at those and see which of them are affordable, which ones are the most, the best ones to do next?
Yes.
Okay, that's what the analysis is about.
Yes, and even prior to getting to that, all right, I want to reaffirm with the commission that that's where you want to go, all right? So I've already looked at it, I already have ideas on it, and I do want to present that back to the commission prior to town meeting, all right, to make sure that that's the direction that you would like to go, all right? But it is my present understanding that the board has already looked at it to that degree before, and that's why I'm looking at it now, so, okay?
Well, I think there are also some possible alternatives and some questions about that plan, and we would welcome your input on that, because I think that one of the things that was mentioned is that in the original Phase 1, Mashpee River wasn't included, and yet that needs to be addressed. And will you be giving your input then on sections that were not necessarily included in this Phase 2? I know we're trying to get away from using phases, but this A, B, C, D, and E, and perhaps you may come up with 3 or 4 other areas that might be alternatives as being more effective for sewering and more cost-effective for sewering in a process as we go forward.
Yes. And I think the other thing too that is important, and this is something that was identified by the commission, and I've, quite frankly, in all my years, I have never fully understood where the state was on this issue. Everything about all of these plans in the MEP or the Mass Estuaries Program process with establishing TMDLs is strictly for the embayments. Okay, I understand that, and they're bad. I understand that. They need help. I understand that. But the ponds are standing alone during that period of time, and the ponds are hurting as well. Okay, they are water bodies, and quite frankly, it's a bit more difficult for Cape ponds as opposed to lakes. Lakes usually have tributaries coming in and leaving. Okay, so they have a regular flushing capacity, if you will, a turnover. But ponds, what goes in stays in there. It doesn't come out. It's there forever, all right? So it makes them unique, and it also makes them, in my opinion, much more susceptible to environmental contamination, degradation, if you will. Okay?
Let me make another point here that touches on, I think, 2 sides to what you were trying to ask them 2 questions ago, Meredith. The solution to this, well, 2 things. The job in front of us and also the construction side is like a tree growing. Now, the tree has got to grow up this street and over to that street, wherever the most houses are, wherever the most leaves are, gets the growth, gets the liquid. Then that's how it all comes back, and it will go into a main that takes it to a septic processing facility. Well, it is actively removing the nitrogen from the system. We will see a fairly rapid response. If we do not add any more new sewerage going into the Mashpee River, and we start cleaning up like 2,000 houses. Well, those 2,000 houses have 2.5 people in each house. So that's 5,000 people. That's times 9 pounds of nitrogen. That's what's coming out of the system. It will have an effect. If we go down and check the water every month, which we're going to be doing as we get further down the road, we will see the change happen. The good news about this is they said it would be a lifetime before Revere Beach in Boston would be ever cleared up because of all the pollution from all the towns around Boston Harbor. 3 years after they finished their construction, they reopened the beach in Revere Beach. It was outstanding. They cheated a little bit because they took an outflow and put it another mile out instead of dumping it a few hundred yards off the beach so that it could flow back on the beach. And they also instituted the limits that you could clean up the water before you dump it back into the environment. So I would say that within a year or two, we're going to start seeing the impact. And the impact will compound over time as we cut off all the new nitrogen going in. The old nitrogen is flushing out, okay? So it's like the first step in the step of a million miles, a trip of a million. It's the damn first step, and that's what we're still fighting through here. Because some people are saying it's not my septic system, somebody's saying this, so get rid of it. It's all of us. We're gonna fix this by cleaning it all up. We're going to take care of stormwater because that's an issue. We're going to take care of nitrogen, that's an issue. Phosphorus, and I'll just reserve my comments to one-on-one about phosphorus in the ponds. That's another issue. But we are going to have a rapid turnaround once we get going. It's just that we got to slug our way through the first financing of the first manufacturing plant, or we're calling it a process plant, and the digging up of half the streets in the town. So it's happening. Be happy. I think it's going to be downhill as far as the effort is required from here. A great deal of ground has been covered. We've learned how not to manage it already, and I think we're on the right path. Has anybody got any more questions? Deb? Phyllis?
Could I add one thing, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Something to keep in mind moving forward, and I understand it because construction of municipal wastewater systems is disruptive, no question about it. It's costly, no question about it. But I think one of the primary things to keep in mind for the future is in the geographic area that we've just embarked on, there will be no discharge. As long as you have on-site systems, and I don't care what kind they are, you have an on-site discharge. You will always have that discharge. And it's not just about nitrogen, it's about everything else in that wastewater, all right? From an environmental perspective, with a municipal system, we're going to collect the waste, all of the waste, every drop of the waste, out of 429 homes, and deliver it to a central processing facility that is adaptable for future regulatory initiatives. If there's something else we have to do to refine it further, we can do it at a centralized point. Individual systems lack that, no matter what they are. They have limitations, and at this point, they have a lot of limitations. I say that because although it may be expensive, although it may be disruptive, it is an absolute that for the future, you have completely taken care of that house as being a problem, of a contributing to a problem as opposed to being part of the solution. So I just wanted to try to make everybody aware of that and keep it in mind because I know the community wrestles with the cost, all right? And I just hope that everybody keeps that in mind.
Al, you still with us?
Yes, I'm here, and I do just have one question, Ray. At the last meeting, we talked about an aerial survey, and you were going to take a look and find out what the status was. Were you able to find out if one had been done or if one is scheduled?
What was required to be done was completed. okay? But that doesn't result in, that was a beginning. That was not an end point, all right? In order to actually do the true aerial for any useful purpose of designing future phases would require additional effort and additional money. I'm still looking at that as to what that means, but
Thank you.
You're involved in the future of it.
I'm sorry?
You will be involved in evaluating the future application of aerial photography.
Yes.
That is something I can really.
Yes, Catherine?
I can help with that.
Okay. I read it for a while in the military, too. And I know the limitations of it. That's why I even question its validity personally.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. The only old business we had was to continue the thought of the review and discussing the draft proposal of the Mashpee Rules and Regulations, just as a general statement, not addressed to you, Ray.
I do have a question to Ray before you leave.
He can talk.
Yeah. I had the pleasure of meeting with you, and I felt that you were wonderful and cordial and gave some wonderful answers. But one of the questions I had asked you was whether or not it was possible to have the OPM look at the rules and regulations to also give another opinion, just so that it's not just you on the hook with saying, yes, these rules and regulations are great, but someone else has looked at it as well, so that the sewer commission then has two engineering ideas, opinions, and all that have said, yeah, it's great.
Of course I did that, yes.
Thank you
Okay,
so
I can
much.
provide that as well.
I believe Anastasia has also done it for GHD.
Right.
So you might get her on the checklist for the same questions.
I'll be seeing her shortly. Today.
Next.
Okay?
Yeah, please say hello. I might stop in and say hello. So I don't have anything, unless anybody else has something.
So you wanted us to look at the rules and regulations.
Right. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I had a couple of them.
Well, definitively without.
Yeah, well, the question that I had mostly was, if we've got the engineering company, at least now two, plus the interim engineer who have looked at the rules and regulations, why would there be hesitation on our part to say, we've looked at them and say, well, let's move them forward?
I don't have any reservations about it. I would have put them in 6 months ago and then let the departments deal with them as a requirement. And that way we'd get them to change things instead of just look at them and let us know.
What do we need to do with them now, is what I'm asking. then.
We just have to be conscious of their importance, and if it looks like the Department of Health or Catherine in the town equipment
Public Works,
area aren't up to speed, so to speak, we got to send someone in with a copy of it to sit down with those people and say, what are your reservations, to get their attention, to get them to sign on to it. I mean, this is to get all of the key departments within the town in agreement. We're not trying to tell them how to do their job. We're asking them to write down their damn job so that we can have it available as a group when this thing is live 6 months or a year from now. Because the day we lay the first pipe and somebody calls up a lawyer because they don't like something, we better have rules and regulations in place or we don't have a seat to sit in.
Right.
They'll shut us down.
When will we be
Wait a minute,
giving
wait a minute,
the?
wait a minute. We got some experience here we got to play on instead of just my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, if it's acceptable to you and the commission, I'd be happy to get together with those various town departments, all right, and make sure that they are comfortable with the regulations, and then let the commission be aware of it.
Okay.
I don't mind doing that.
What we've got to do is get them acknowledged that we're going to have these in place on X date. this is it. Because from there on, we're in trouble with hooking people up and all of the other ramifications.
And I can take care of that for you if you'd like.
You should, please.
I'd be happy to.
All right, and you give us an update every time we meet?
I will. Okay?
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
It's off
Thank you.
our table. Meredith, good girl.
Not a girl.
Oh, excuse me, that's a positive statement, wasn't negative.
I know
Okay.
it was. But the only other thing I had that's been a concern since I first looked at them is that there's mention all through the rules and regulations of the director of the facility. And the question is, and I think when I've asked this question, it might fall to the town engineer.
Correct.
Well, it's a huge job to keep this facility and the collection systems and all that going and be town engineer. So my question is there going to be a director that'll be either appointed or hired that will be running the wastewater facility?
The town has created a wastewater authority that is an engineering position only at this time.
But.
There
well,
will be
Okay.
it's planned to have a town engineer take Ray's place.
I understand that, but the town engineer's job will be huge and would be building on a lack of success if you have town engineer doing all the town engineer stuff, plus the wastewater facility, plus helping to plan the rest of the whole wastewater system.
Well,
So
the
I'm-
document, the R&R document, says that for each question you have about the septic system, there is a department responsible for it, not just the engineer.
Well, it's not clear in here. It says the director.
That's true. I found that.
That's
that
a
was my-
reference
Yeah,
all
well, that
the
was my
time.
first question. Who was the director?
Exactly.
And it
The
was,
town engineer.
well, that should have been stated in the document.
At the time that document was written, we didn't have a town engineer. So it
So-
was- I didn't know what to put in as a name, so I just called him the director.
So there will be some changes to this before we
Yeah.
have a chance to say.
That's what it's all
rubber
about.
stamp
We've
good.
got to get it edited by all of the people it affects.
Okay, okay, that's acceptable.
And your point's valid, but the point is, the whole reason to do this is to assign the responsibility to the 5 or 10 areas in the town that already have that responsibility. Just acknowledge it and get it in a document.
Agreed.
Because towns don't get too documented, initially. It catches up, and this is a catch-up routine.
Okay,
The other thing was to get all the typical standards out on the type of piping and so on that we have to hold the subcontractors to. The standards.
but aren't some of those standards, I haven't looked at, but aren't some of those standards for the size of the pipes and the size of and the types of the connections and all of the other technical things built into the proposals that the engineering companies have submitted to us about the facility and about the piping?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, okay. So then you need a separate document then for the rules and regulations with those specifications in it.
Let's just take as a point her question, if we just ran down the street, we're gonna throw a pipe into my house, 40 feet straight on. There is a qualification in there that it says for whatever, it has to be a minimum size and minimum material strength and all of that. What was your question about that?
Would that be in the plan?
Is it
That-
in the request for quote?
Yeah.
Yes.
And does it come off our document, the R&R?
As I said, fortunately for the document, they're standards. Those are industry
Those are,
standards.
yeah, industry
So,
standards.
yes,
That were put in that document.
yes.
Wonderful.
See, it was done by a good engineer at most of the information, Chatham. And it is their system that was documented initially.
Yep.
Okay?
I don't have anything. Oh, wait a minute, there is one more thing. A discussion of sewer commission chairperson.
before we go to that, may I
Yes.
just ask one more question? I'm so excited about the new people who have come on board, and now that I'm a veteran, but being the newest person on the commission, I would love it if we could set up some sort of orientation for our new members, at least to give them an in writing, just general things like what you need to know and how we can help you. We need to do an orientation for them, just to help them have their feet on the ground. I don't know how you all feel about that, but I do feel that when I came in, it would have been helpful to have more of an orientation. I felt that the people who are working with me in the commission were extraordinary in helping me to understand what was going on, but I still felt that I needed to do a lot of catch up on my own, and perhaps we can make it a little bit easier for the three of them.
I think we were discussing that before you came in about having Ray Jack help us out as a group to get these questions answered and get the overview that I know I need.
I know it would be enormously beneficial, and we had just discussed, Ray Jack had offered to discuss with us, the new commissioners, and had offered his time, and we had suggested maybe we could coordinate that so we didn't have to do it 3 times. So I love your idea, and I would very much appreciate any effort put into bringing us up to speed, because as I was reading through things the last few nights, we have a lot more to read through.
There's a public meeting law that we got to make sure we don't run across and get in trouble on. But fundamentally, everything we're going to do is associated with 2 documents, the plan that was accepted in 2015 and the draft of the R&R. It's that simple, okay? Because once you get into either one of them, there's references from there to Timbuktu if you want to keep going. I don't know how to say, A, B, C, and get together because we're not sure what the question would be. The question may be that the construction group wants to throw it back on us. Where do you really want to go in the next phase, whatever we're going to call it? Because what we've got to do is start making a difference on the amount of nitrogen that's getting in, and that means we got to hook up more houses. We get the first 450, that's what we're planning on. That's what all the equipment is going to go into the building to do in the first cycle. Now, the next phase is how much do we go up? And basically, it's go up north to where the houses are. But that was in the original plan, and it was in a plan that was sponsored by Andy. So it doesn't matter. All that matters is that we do it. We pick up more houses as soon as we can and get a relative cost out there so we can put a request for funds in the next town meeting agenda that says, we know it's going to cost another $50,000 over the next 10 years, and what we need now is 25% of that, or $12 million, to get the planning done for the next phase. That's what Andy was trying to do, and there was a little missteps there with a couple of people involved. It doesn't change anything. That was what the original plan was to begin with, except we just want to accelerate the original plan now and get it in documents so that the townspeople have an opportunity to see it. And that's our individual education as well. That's why I'm coming around the loop. That's what we've got to do. And follow up with Ray here on any of the departments that need a little help, a little sit down maybe to count the houses in an area or some other situation like that. I'm not sure who was doing that, but I got the houses all counted in A, B, and C, and whether those are specific streets in what we do next or not. Catherine, you had a question?
To help her
Yep.
question, to help her,
Yep.
to help answer her.
Yep.
I was thinking, you're going to have a couple of meetings with DPW and I guess others.
You need to be at the microphone.
Please.
I thought you were giving me the naughty again.
This injury is about 10 days old. I'm still getting used to it. Sorry. I was thinking to help answer Meredith's question, instead of a separate event, perhaps because he's having meetings with other people across the town, there's other opportunities where those of us who are new could attend and learn from that experience, learn about the needs of other people, of other staff, and their perspectives on the R&R, because making sure there's no conflicts, I think, is the critical thing. I think down the road, amendments can be made, but the point is make sure there's no conflicts at the outset now before you prove it, right?
Oops, sorry. Right now, I'm in the middle of scheduling a meeting with 4 town departments. It's not easy. My point being that with all of you, trying to coordinate on your daily schedules and theirs at the same time that would be difficult at best, okay? I was presuming that I'd be able to, excuse me, arrange these meetings with the various department heads and everything, and then be able to get their views on it. They can submit that in writing if it pleases the board, and then be able to report back to you on that. But I think it would probably be difficult for me to try to arrange those meetings around everybody's schedule. That's a lot of people.
You wouldn't have to arrange it around
No.
my schedule. The point is just let us know if
Sure.
there's an event.
Yeah. Okay?
It was just a thought.
Can we go to the last item?
Sure.
I have reached a point in my employment career where I retired 4 or 5 times, and parts are falling off me when I get out of bed in the morning, so. I have one unique thing, and I have to apologize to Meredith. I can look you right in the face. I've looked my wife in the face, and I can't recall her name. So I'm losing words, and I'm losing context. I know I want to make a point, and I've got to bring out 3 issues and then get to the point. I get involved in that thought process, and I go to the point, but I forgot the process, or I remember the process and don't know where I'm going. So I've got to be careful, and I want to get rid of the chairmanship, quite frankly. I'd be happy to sit in on anything. I probably have seen more major construction than anybody in the room, and a lot of different things. And they all boil down to some simple principles. Once you understand that, they're not complex anymore. And I have to caution Meredith, don't look for complexity. It isn't there. Complexity is an idle mind, okay? It loves things that are unanswered, and we all have that habit. Well, that's the wrong street to get out, the wrong side of the bed to get out of in the morning. All you got to remember is the bathroom's the second door. Do that first thing, and then make your bed when you leave. Now, you've already accomplished 2 things. You're on a go, all right? So that's the way it works when you have lawyers yelling at you, financial people yelling at you, banks threatening to foreclose. You just have to ignore the noise and do your job. The noise will take you down. The noise will ruin any committee. And the noise almost ruined the sewer committee in a couple of months. We're on the right path now, and I don't see a problem. But what we're going to have to do in the very near future is have an election of a sewer commissioner. So I just want to make sure everybody keeps that in mind. Anybody have anything else they wanted to discuss?
If you want to continue with talking about the idea of a new chair, can we wait till we have everybody on board in full strength and put it on the agenda as a point for us to consider at different times, so people have a chance to think about it, and we're all here and everybody has had a chance to,
I thought that's what I just did.
I think I lost either the process or the point.
Don't start at me, you'll whip me again.
I think where we're at is that there's a new member who should be seated with us when we take that vote. Is that,
Absolutely, that's what I was getting at.
Okay.
I would, and Al needs to be back at the table, and he will be back at the table, yes, Al?
Yep.
Yes, but I think that that would be great if we're all here before that gets discussed.
so we could put that on next meeting's agenda and deal with it as,
Question is, when are we gonna have our next meeting? Is anything gonna happen in the next 6, 7 days that's important?
No.
And today was the 14th,
14th, yeah, my half-birthday.
so
Just
the
so that y'all
28th,
know.
the 28th would be 2 weeks.
that certainly works for
Do we
me.
plan on the 28th? We'll try and keep this Thursday afternoon for a couple of reasons. People are available. Also, if we call in the engineers, they're employed during the daytime hours, not after 6. The town facilities are open.
It also doesn't conflict with other meetings.
Yeah. So we'll go for 2 o'clock on the 28th, Susan?
May I make one suggestion?
Sure.
I noticed that on this document, which was the minutes, it didn't refer to the month. It just said Thursday, 23,
Yeah, I noticed that too.
2022. So can we
I'll fix
always,
that.
we'll include the month because we tend to have our meetings strung out.
See, what happens is when you go through your 30s, you start losing words, you know?
I hear you. I'm well beyond my 30s.
Anything else?
No, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Al, you want to close that out?
I'll give a second.
All right. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.